They told me never to look out the window at 3 in the morning. It wasn't some silly piece of advice. It was more like an order. The kind of thing that sticks in your head even when you don't want it to. I should have listened, but I didn't. To this day, I can't really explain why. Maybe it was just curiosity. Maybe it was because every night I felt like something was calling me to the glass. It was as if the whole house was pushing my steps toward the window, and deep down, I think part of me already knew I was going to give in. That night, when I looked at the clock, it was exactly 3 o'clock. The silence was so heavy it felt like the world had stopped. The air suddenly turned cold, and I felt that someone was out there. I didn't hear a sound, I didn't see a movement, but I knew. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was screaming inside my chest. Don't look. But I looked. And ever since, nothing has been the same. What I saw wasn't just some random shadow. It wasn't just a passing figure. It was something staring right at me, like it already knew me, like it had been waiting for that moment. I'm not telling you this because I want attention. I'm telling you because maybe you still have time. So if anyone ever tells you not to look out the window at 3 in the morning, listen, don't make the same mistake I did. When I first moved into that house, nothing really seemed strange. It was just an ordinary place with walls a little stained, old windows that creaked when the wind blew. I was more worried about unpacking my stuff, making the bed, getting the internet hooked up, the usual things people do when they move somewhere new. Nothing about it screamed get out right away. On the contrary, it was quiet, peaceful, maybe a little too peaceful. It was only during the first week that things started to change. I had just finished unloading some boxes when I heard someone knocking at the door. It was a neighbor. I'd never seen the guy before, and to this day I wonder where he came from, because it seems like after that day he simply disappeared. He was tall, thin, and looked kind of sick, you know? The kind of person who stares at you like they haven't slept properly in months. He didn't ask my name, didn't welcome me to the neighborhood. He just stared at me and said, "Don't look out the window at 3 in the morning." I froze. I laughed a little and said, "Excuse me?" thinking he was joking. But he didn't laugh. His face was serious, tense. He repeated the same line, but a little quieter. "Never look out the window at 3. And that was it. He turned around and walked away. I just stood there feeling unsettled. Because honestly, who says something like that? I tried to brush it off, but that phrase wouldn't leave my head. That night when I lay down, I caught myself staring at the clock. It was still an hour before 3, and my heart was already racing for no reason. The first few nights passed without anything unusual. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself it was just some old superstition, a silly neighborhood legend. But every time 3 a.m. came around, something made me wake up. No alarm, no noise. I would just open my eyes and the clock always said the same thing. 3 o'clock sharp. On the 4th night, I woke up again. The house was completely silent. No cars, no dogs barking, nothing. And I had a very clear feeling that someone was out there. Not a neighbor, not a drunk stumbling down the street. Different. It felt like a presence, standing still, waiting for me to approach the window. I stayed frozen, listening to my own heartbeat. My whole body was on edge, but curiosity was pulling me like an invisible rope. I remembered the warning, "Don't look out the window at 3. I didn't look, but in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. If I went to the glass, I wouldn't just see the dark street outside. Something was waiting for me. And the strangest part? It was like whatever it was already knew my name. The next night, I went to bed later than usual. I kept scrolling on my phone, the TV on mute, just to have some light in the room. It's not that I was scared. Okay, maybe a little. But I didn't want to admit that to myself. It's kind of ridiculous, right? Being spooked by a line from some stranger I barely knew. But when I finally turned everything off and tried to sleep, that same tightness hit my chest, a pressure that seemed to come from the air itself, like the whole house had suddenly grown heavier. Everything was still. Too still. I turned to my side, pulled the blanket halfway over my face and tried to sleep. Closed my eyes. but my body wouldn't relax. My mind was racing, waiting for something to happen. I didn't know what, but my instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Then, with no alarm, no noise, I opened my eyes, reached for my phone. 3 o'clock sharp. The same feeling hit me instantly. The silence felt denser, almost alive, if that makes sense. It was like time itself had frozen. And the worst part? I felt that if I stayed awake too long, something would notice I was there. I stayed in bed, trying to ignore it. But then, I heard something. It wasn't loud, just a subtle sound. A creak, like wood shifting. It came from the living room, then another, closer to the kitchen, like someone was walking very slowly, carefully, paying attention to every step. My heart was pounding. I thought about getting up, but my legs wouldn't move. The sound stopped. For a few seconds, nothing. Then it came again. This time, closer. From the sound of it, whatever it was moving directly toward my bedroom window. I lay there, facing the opposite side, trying not to move a muscle. Barely even breathing. I couldn't see the window from where I was, but I knew exactly where it was. And I swear to you, I could feel something there outside. No shadow, no light, but my body knew. And then came the strangest part of all. The sound stopped suddenly, but the presence stayed. Not moving, not making a sound. Just waiting. As if it were waiting for me to do something. As if it were waiting for me to move. I thought about getting up and looking, I really did. But the neighbor's warning echoed in my head like a siren. Don't look, don't look, don't look. So I stayed there, motionless. My face turned away, eyes open in the dark, straining to catch any change. But nothing happened. When I finally noticed, it was almost 5 in the morning. The sun was starting to brighten the window. I got up slowly, walked to the glass, took a deep breath, and looked. The street was empty. The sky was starting to change color. No one was outside. But for some reason, the bottom of the glass was fogged up, as if someone had been standing there, breathing, from the outside. After that night, I could never sleep the same again. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, but it wasn't. I know what I felt. And I know something was out there. Even so, during the day, everything seemed normal again. Sunlight streaming through the windows, the sound of people walking on the sidewalk, kids shouting in the distance, all the movement that makes you think, okay, maybe I overreacted. But as soon as the sun disappeared over the horizon, everything changed. The next week I decided to go out more, walk around the neighborhood. Part of it was just to get some air, to forget what had happened. But deep down I was curious. I wanted to understand what that warning meant. I couldn't get it out of my head. I started small talk with people I passed on the street. Nothing serious, just casual. But when I asked how long they'd lived there, or if they knew the area well, their reactions changed. A little old man selling fruit on the corner, for example, suddenly tensed up. He looked around and said quietly, "This neighborhood has its rules." I asked what kind of rules. He just shook his head and said, "Some things are better not to know." Another day I went into a bakery nearby. The clerk was friendly, chatting and smiling. But as soon as I mentioned I had just moved into a house on the next street and that the place felt a little too quiet, she stopped smiling. Her face went serious instantly. "Have you heard anything?" she asked, almost whispering. I pretended not to understand. "Any noises at night, or like a presence?" She pressed. I said sometimes I woke up at 3, but maybe it was just coincidence. She bit her lip and said, "Be careful with the window." It was always the same thing, a veiled warning. Nobody said it outright, but you could feel it in the air. There was something on that street everyone preferred to ignore. I started noticing details. Houses with heavy curtains, even on small windows. Some looked like they had furniture pushed up against the glass. In one, I saw the entire front window covered in aluminum foil. At night, no house kept their lights on for long. It was like everyone was trying to pretend nothing existed outside after a certain hour. That's when I decided to look for the man who had warned me in the first place, the thin neighbor with the tired eyes. I started asking around discreetly, but nobody seemed to know who I was talking about. An older man across the street told me no one new had moved in for a long time, that no houses had been rented in recent weeks, which didn't make sense, because I saw the man. He knocked on my door, he spoke to me. I remember his clothes, his voice. There's no way I imagined that. Or did I? That same night when I went to bed, I left a chair blocking the curtain, just as a precaution. But at 3 o'clock sharp, I woke up again. This time the sound was clearer. 3 knocks, slow, heavy, like someone pressed their hand gently against the glass and tapped with the tips of their fingers. I held my breath. The chair was still there, the curtain was closed, but the sound came from my window. And for the first time, I didn't just feel like something was outside. I felt like it knew exactly that I was inside, awake, waiting, like it was part of some kind of game, like it was testing me. Waking up at 3 in the morning had already become routine. Even going to bed exhausted, even trying to force my body with pills or hot drinks, it didn't matter. 3 o'clock sharp, my eyes would snap open as if something was pulling them, and I always knew what came next. Sometimes it was a noise, sometimes just silence, but the most disturbing part was when everything just stopped. No sound, no wind, nothing. It was like the entire world was waiting for me to do something, and the only thought that came to mind was, get up and go to the window. I started noticing that during the day my behavior had changed too. I was restless. I couldn't focus. It was like my mind was stuck at night, stuck on what happened at that cursed hour. The window became an obsession. In the daytime, it was just a window, but at night, it felt alive. I even went so far as to take the curtain down. I thought maybe if I left the glass uncovered, whatever it was would lose interest and go away. But it only got worse. I started feeling like something was watching me, even with daylight pouring in. You know that feeling of someone staring at you from behind? Yeah, that. One afternoon while I was washing dishes, I heard a faint sound coming from the living room. It was the glass, that high-pitched squeak you hear when someone slowly drags their finger across clean glass. I walked over. No one there. But when I got close to the window, I saw 3 marks. 3. As if wet fingers had pressed against the glass and slid down slowly. From that day on, I started realizing it wasn't just happening at night. Whatever it was getting bolder. The breaking point came one night when I woke up, again at 3. But this time I didn't hear knocks. I didn't see shadows. I didn't even feel a presence. What happened was different. It was the voice. Simple, clear, whispered. It came from the direction of the window and said just one thing. I know you're awake. I froze. I couldn't move. My whole body went cold like the air in my lungs had turned to ice. And the worst part is, I don't know if the voice came from outside or from inside. The next day, I decided I needed to leave, get away from the house for a while. I took the car and drove downtown. I wandered aimlessly just to feel people around me. I went into a cafe and ordered something, anything, just to sit there. The waitress was young, about my age. She asked if I was okay, and without thinking, I blurted something out. Not everything. Just a quick question, almost in shock. Have you ever heard of anything strange happening on that street near the old part of town? She stopped, looked at me for a few seconds, and then said, the street where nobody leaves their windows open? I froze. You know something? I asked. She only said, I grew up near there. My parents always told me that if I looked out the window at night, something would see me. I wanted to ask more, but her expression changed. She looked uncomfortable, pretended someone was calling her from the kitchen, and walked away. She never came back to my table. I returned home more confused than ever. The urge to look out the window started eating me alive. I had to know. I had to see. That night, I prepared, turned off all the lights, sat on the couch with my phone in my hand, stopwatch open, and waited. The clock passed 2:30, then 2:50, 2:59. My heart was about to explode. 3, 0, 0. I stood up, walked to the window, but I stopped. My feet locked to the floor, my whole body tense. It was like the air had turned to cement around me. I felt a presence, clear, strong, closer than ever. But even then, I didn't look. Almost, but not. And for the first time, I had the impression that whatever it was got angry. I can't explain what changed that night. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe anger, or maybe that was it. I was just sick of living in fear of something I didn't even understand. The truth is, I hadn't slept properly in days. My eyes were sunken. I'd lost my appetite. My head spun constantly. It was like the house was slowly draining me. So I decided I was going to end it. I was going to look. That simple. There was no point in running anymore. Curiosity was stronger than fear, and if I had to face something, it would be head-on. That night, I turned off every light in the house, locked all the doors, and sat alone in the living room staring at the clock on my phone. 15 minutes to 3. Time dragged on, every second stretching endlessly like it was mocking me. When it hit 3 a.m., silence fell. Real silence. Heavy. Dense. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was like the air itself had stopped. The fridge stopped humming. The ticking clock went quiet. No cars outside. No wind. Not even a leaf moved. I stood up. My hands were clammy as I walked toward the window. Every step felt heavier than the last, like something was trying to hold me back, but my body kept moving. I wasn't in control. When I got close to the glass, I hesitated. My heart was pounding harder than ever before. I knew that if I looked, something would change. And still, I looked. Slowly, I pushed the curtain aside and stared into the dark street. For a few seconds, nothing, just the empty sidewalk, streetlights out, the same still landscape as every other night. But then, across the street, between two parked cars, there was someone, standing still, staring at me. I couldn't make out the face. The light was too dim, and it was like the shadow didn't move with the rest of the darkness. The figure was motionless, but I could feel the weight of its gaze. The air around me turned freezing. I started to tremble. I tried to convince myself it was just someone passing by. But nobody stands that still. And then, just as I thought about closing the curtain, the figure raised its hand, slowly, and waved. Not a normal wave. Strange. Slow. Like every movement carried unbearable weight. Like it was acknowledging that I had finally seen it. My body locked up. I couldn't look away. I was trapped. Frozen. A part of me screamed to run, to hide, to slam the curtain shut. But I couldn't. The figure stayed there for 5, maybe 10 seconds, just staring. And then it was gone. It didn't walk away. It didn't fade into the dark. It just wasn't there anymore. I yanked the curtain shut so hard I nearly tore it from the rail. I ran to my room, locked the door, curled up in bed like a child. My heart was ready to burst out of my chest. I knew what I had done. I knew I'd broken the only rule. And the worst part? Deep down, I felt like this was only the beginning. After that night, everything changed. I'm not exaggerating, it wasn't just paranoia. The air inside the house felt different, heavier, thicker, like the whole place had absorbed something I had let in. I woke up with daylight streaming through the window, but it felt like I hadn't slept. My body was exhausted, my head pounding. I went into the kitchen, and the first thing I noticed was that the curtain was open, and I remember closing it, slamming it shut. I locked the window. I heard the click of the latch, but it was open, and on the glass were marks again, not fingerprints, long vertical streaks, like someone had dragged their nails down it. I splashed water on my face, tried to breathe, tried to convince myself it could have been me, panicking, but I knew it wasn't. Something was wrong, and the feeling only got worse as the day went on. Everything felt off. The mirrors reflected light strangely. The corners of the room seemed darker than they should. Time seemed to move differently inside the house. Sometimes I swore an hour had passed, and when I checked my phone, it had only been 10 minutes. And the nightmares, they started that same night. It was always the same. I dreamed I was lying in bed, eyes open, staring at the window. And outside, that figure, standing, watching me. Sometimes it smiled. Sometimes it knocked on the glass with its knuckles. And sometimes it spoke. But the worst part wasn't what it said. It was the tone. Calm, familiar, almost intimate, like it had known me for a long time. I woke up drenched in sweat, trembling, my throat dry. But the strangest detail was that every time I woke up, the window was a little more open, an inch more, sometimes two. Like someone was opening it slowly, night after night. I started avoiding sleep at night. I'd nap in the morning on the couch with the TV on, as if daytime noise could protect me. But even that didn't work for long. I started seeing strange reflections, in the shower glass, in the wardrobe mirror, even on the microwave door. A shadow flickering too fast to be sure. A movement where nothing should be. A figure passing behind me, even with all the doors locked. One day I nearly lost it completely. I bent over the sink brushing my teeth, and when I raised my head, the reflection in the mirror didn't follow right away. Like I moved, and it lagged a half-second behind. It might sound like nothing, but in that moment, my stomach dropped. It was like the mirror was thinking, watching, reacting on its own. And then, the worst began. It started bleeding into my days. A friend called me to check in and said my voice sounded different, that I seemed distant, disconnected. A neighbor told me I looked pale, that my eyes looked hollow, and I started realizing the house didn't let me leave for long. You know that feeling when you've forgotten something important? When you have to go back? I'd go out for a walk, and within half an hour my chest would tighten, like something was pulling me back. I needed to be there, in that house. Or rather, it needed me to be there. I didn't know anymore if I was losing my mind or if something real was happening. But with each passing day, the presence grew stronger. And I knew that sooner or later it wouldn't just stay outside the window. There were days when I could pretend everything was fine. I'd walk around the house trying to look busy, put some music on in the background, leave the TV running all day just to have something filling the silence. But it didn't matter, because the silence wasn't just the absence of sound. It felt like an entity all its own. It waited, it listened, and lately, it spoke. I know how strange that sounds, but that's exactly how it felt. The house had started to communicate. The knocking came back, but it wasn't like before. Now it had rhythm. It was sharper, more aggressive, like something was growing impatient. One night at 3:05, I heard a sequence of 5 quick, dry knocks, like a demand. I was lying there, covers pulled up to my neck, when I heard my name whispered, right at the bedroom door. Not the window. The door. I jumped up, but the house was empty. I locked everything, checked window by window, and still that feeling remained. It knew I was awake, and it was trying to get in. One night, on impulse, I set my phone to record audio while I slept, just to see, just to try to capture something. The next morning, I listened, and what I heard nearly made me drop the phone. Around 3:04, you can clearly hear my breathing. And then another one. Out of sync, heavy, low, like someone else was in the room with me. Then came a voice, not a full word, more like it was trying to mimic the sound of my name, but with the wrong mouth. A rasping, broken sound. But you could understand, it was my name. From that day on, everything blurred. Doors started opening on their own, even when locked. Light bulbs blew out just from me walking past. My dreams started bleeding into reality. Once I woke up in the living room with no idea how I got there, my feet covered in dirt. The worst night was when I heard the voice coming from 2 places at once. One whispered my name outside the window. The other whispered the same thing right behind me in the hallway. I froze in the middle of the room, not knowing where to look. It was like standing between 2 mirrors, but instead of reflections, there were presences, one on each side, closing in. At that point, it wasn't about resisting anymore. It was about surviving. I started sleeping with a knife next to the bed. Ridiculous, I know. But it was the only thing that gave me any sense of control. I added extra locks, bought a lamp with a motion sensor, filled the house with salt and garlic, anything I thought might help. Nothing worked. And then came the night I understood what it wanted. I was asleep, or trying to be, when I heard a single sharp knock that made my eyes snap open immediately. I looked at the clock. 2:59, and then came the sound. Not a knock, not a whisper. A sharp crack like something had split. And then, the window slid open by itself. Slow, dragging. But what really stole my breath wasn't that. It was what came after. The voice. Again, but this time clear. Look again. That was it. Simple, like an invitation, or a command. My spine went cold, my body froze, and then I realized it wasn't me being curious anymore. It was it, that thing. It was impatient now, like it had done everything right, followed every step, every knock, every breath, like it had already won. The truth is, from the very first day, I was never in control. And that night, for the first time, I felt it wasn't outside anymore. It was inside. I tried not to look. I swear I did. After that voice, after the window opened by itself, every part of me wanted to run. But you can't run from something that's already inside. That night was the longest of my life. I spent the hours sitting on the bedroom floor, pressed against the wall opposite the window, knife in hand, face dripping with sweat. I didn't sleep, didn't eat. I just stayed there, waiting. And the most terrifying part? The calm. Nothing else happened until sunrise. No knocks, no whispers, no shadows. It was like it was giving me time, letting me think. And deep down, I knew what was coming. The next night, I prepared like I was going to war. I locked every door with extra bolts, taped X's over the windows, left lights on in the main rooms, lamps, candles, bowls of salt water, anything you can imagine. And still, at 3 sharp, I woke up. Not to a sound, not to the cold. I just opened my eyes, and the first thing I saw was the clock. 0:03 cows. I lay there for a few seconds, waiting for something to start. But everything was quiet. Absolute silence. Again. Then came the feeling. Not that something was outside, but that someone was in the room with me. The air grew thick, heavy, almost solid. My breath turned short, my ears started ringing. I sat up slowly, reaching for the knife. But when I looked straight ahead, the window was open. Not cracked, wide open, the curtain swaying, cold wind pouring in. I stood up slowly, like every muscle was being pulled by invisible strings. I took 3 steps to the center of the room and stopped. And that's when I saw it. In the glass, reflected, was the whole room. The bed, the wardrobe, the door. Everything as it should be, except one thing. Behind me, a figure still motionless at my side. I froze. Couldn't turn around. I just stood there staring at the reflection. And the longer I looked, the closer it seemed to get. The face, or what should have been a face, was blurred. Like the glass couldn't hold the details. But you could make out the deep-set eyes, the mouth stretching slowly, into something like a smile. But it wasn't human. It was a warning. And I won. And then, without a sound, the figure in the reflection placed its hand on my shoulder. I felt it. The touch was cold, dry, like something dead had reached me. My body broke out in chills. I spun around, desperate to see. But there was no one there. Empty. But the mirror still showed it. It was still there, as if it had decided the reflection was where it belonged now. I slammed the window shut, pulled the curtain, stumbled out of the room, locked myself in the bathroom, sat on the floor with my head in my hands, trembling. From that night on, it didn't matter whether I looked or not. It could see me either way. And the worst part, I could feel it was happy about it, like seeing it had only been the beginning. Like now it was adjusting to the house, to my time, to my body. And the more I denied it, the more it appeared. on the black TV screen, in the back of a spoon, in the car window. Even once, in someone else's eye, in a public restroom mirror, I thought I saw it. It didn't just want to be seen, it wanted to be remembered, to become a part of me. And by then, I wasn't sure anymore who was who when I looked into the mirror. I've lost track of the days now. I don't even know what time it is anymore. Time has stopped in here. Every time I look at the clock, it says the same thing. 03. Even with the sun outside, even with my phone fully charged. Always 3 in the morning. The house is different now. Furniture moves on its own, lights flicker when I walk by. Sometimes the walls seem closer, like the room has shrunk overnight. The kitchen has no smell anymore. And the bedroom, I don't go in there. Someone else lives there now. Or something. After that last time I looked in the mirror, everything was off. I can't trust what I see anymore. My reflection copies me, but with a delay. Sometimes it smiles when I'm serious. Sometimes it keeps staring even after I look away. Last night I went into the bathroom in the dark. Of course the light was out. I used my phone's flashlight and aimed it at the mirror, and there it was, my reflection, but frozen, still staring at me, like it was waiting. And then it blinked before I did. That's when I understood. Whatever had been outside the window was inside me now. It wasn't about seeing anymore. It was about being seen, about making space for something to creep into me, piece by piece, without me noticing. Ever since I looked out that window, my life has been invaded in silence. First the knocks, then the presence, then the reflections, and now there are moments when I catch myself doing things I don't remember. I've found photos on my phone I never took, call logs I never made, a contact saved with my own name, and when I dialed it, the line picked up with silence. But a silence that was warm, alive, a silence that breathed. One morning I woke up with dirt under my nails, the window open, my feet filthy. I didn't remember leaving, but it felt like someone else had come back in my place. The neighbor, the one who always fed the cats, disappeared. The police came, nobody knows anything. But I saw. She looked. I saw her bedroom light on at 3 in the morning. I saw her shadow moving at the window. And now, her apartment is empty. But sometimes, the light turns on by itself. People on the street avoid me. They cross to the other side of the sidewalk. It's not fear. It's instinct. Like they can sense something wrong leaking out of me. And the worst part is that I can feel it too. Today I stared at my reflection for a long time. Just stood there waiting for it to defy me. But it didn't. It just stared back with the same look I saw that night when the figure waved at me from across the street. That's when I truly understood. It never wanted me to see it. It wanted me to know it exists, that it always has, that it's been here since before the house, before the street, before the name I carry. And now, it wears my face. So if you're listening to this, if someone ever told you a story like mine, if someone has ever warned you not to look out the window at 3 a.m., believe them. Don't try to be brave. Don't try to understand, because some things aren't meant to be seen. And if you do look even just once, it will see you too, and then it will never stop. Never. If you made it to the end, if at any point you caught yourself staring at your reflection a little too long, then this channel is for you. Subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. There's so much more that still needs to be told. And leave just one phrase in the comments. Don't look. That way, I'll know who stayed until the end. Oh, and if this video held your attention, if you forgot about the world outside even for a moment, leave a like. It helps more than you realize, really. There's another video right here with more terrifying creepypastas. Click it and keep going with me there. I'll be waiting.